Blessed be everyone. Hello and welcome to Black Magic Talk. We're on episode 32. So sorry that we haven't recorded in a while, but I, as well as my co-host, as well as Daniel, have also been very, very busy. I can't tell you, I've been so exhausted these last couple of weeks. I've almost canceled all my shows for the week because I need to, recoup. But Matt, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks.
Yep.
Getting used to the time
Now,
change still.
yeah, that's the other thing. The time change just happened, and our bodies still need to adjust to that timeline. Even though we get an hour of sleep, it doesn't even feel like it, does it? I mean, it just feels normal, to have this time change or whatever. Other than it gets darker earlier here, and where Matt is. Does Australia have time changes there, Daniel?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, depending on which state you're in, but also this weird thing that happens between my state and the one below, where they change it, and it messes a lot of people up. So
yeah, and you need that time to kind of get into a routine, and unfortunately, with the way things are and have been in my life, a routine is just a wishful desire. So I've been trying to kind of keep a schedule, although schedules always change, especially when this weekend I will have my son. Next weekend my ex will have my son, and then he'll have him again, and then he wants them Christmas evening because he's going to keep him till Sunday. So I mean, it's like things will always change, even though this year we have him for Thanksgiving and we're supposed to have him for Christmas evening, but I'm a little flexible with that. But anyway, let's get down to the coup de grace of why we are here today. This is round 2 for Daniel. As everyone knows, he was on our show briefly for an hour, and we got to talking, and we just couldn't stop, could we? I mean, it was like past an hour, and we're still having fun. So, Daniel, tell us what you're up to right now. Any projects in the works, anything with Cassandra. We did talk to her. She's a wonderful lady. I really enjoyed the tarot reading she gave me, and she was on the right track there with me. So just tell us any irons in the fire and what you're doing now, and how we can reach you.
cool. Yeah, so what I've been wanting to focus on for a while is my rune course. So basically, the longest that I've done anything in the magical realm has been with the runes. So about maybe 12, 13 or so years ago, possibly longer, when I was starting to delve into magic, I was getting into hermetic magic, and then I was getting into the runic system. And I realized I kind of had to choose one or the other. And so I still obviously dabble with the hermetic path and ceremonial magic, but I chose to join the Rune Guild and to really dedicate time and effort towards the runes. And eventually my path led towards yoga, and I realized how yoga was kind of interwoven into everything, including the Rune Guild curriculum, right? So essentially what Edred Thorson has done is take a lot of the runic principles and as much information as you can gather. And then I kind of see it as like an organ transplant, because we've lost a lot of the information about the practices, right? So we don't have a lot of the information and sources and the unbroken tradition like we do in a system such as yoga with the runes. And so I think what he's done is kind of put it together as best he can, and like, oh, cool, we don't have this organ, we don't have a traditional runic European liver to put in here. So we find, like, I think the yogic liver fits really well, and it's like kind of put it together. And I think he cops a lot of flack for bridging systems like that, but I think there you have to do it anyway. I mean, even the names of the runes are kind of reconstructed, right? And so to circle back to your question, the relevance of that is that when I started teaching rune yoga as my main thing, I was going around festivals, I was teaching like rune yoga. That was my main thing that I was doing. And a lot of the feedback I got from the yoga community was like, oh, that's really weird that you're mixing runes with yoga. That's not traditional. I was like, guys, you guys are teaching, the 7 chakra rainbow system, you're teaching sun salutations, all these things that are like less than 100 years old, and you're calling them traditional. Like, how can you? And I think that I realized there was this big confusion in the yoga world, or just like the magical spiritual world in general, because also, like, when I go to pagan festivals and try to like introduce them to rune yoga, they'd be like, oh no, we don't want to like stretch and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, well, we're not really going to do any of that. It's more like chanting and movement and all that sort of stuff. And so I think there was this whole re-education needed for the yoga world, and also a re-education for myself, because I knew a lot of these things, but I didn't have the proper, I guess, more scholarly knowledge of like where the origins of a lot of these things came from and how to really bridge that effectively. And so what I did, I started, I basically put runes off to the side, which is really, really difficult because all my practical magic, all my stuff was like default runes. And I dove really deeply for the last maybe 4 or 5 years into the classical tantric path. So I found a really good teacher. I already dabbled in classical tantra yoga a bit, but this was like, no, I'm going to dedicate 4 straight years to pretty much nothing but the tantric path. And it was really, really beneficial. And that's where I started to obviously build the yoga teacher training from, and really get both properly educated on a like kind of historical, bookish level. But then I obviously was practicing very intently, like almost daily practices with tantric deities and all that sort of stuff. And so that's been great. But have you ever, I think for me, a good way to know what truly is for me is when I go and do other things and I see the comparison and how different it feels. I love classical tantra. I love the tantric path, yoga, and all that sort of stuff. But like, nowhere in any of that did I get the deep, like soul, like full body, visceral connection with all that stuff like I have with the runes. And it's been so difficult to not do much of the rune stuff. But now next year is like, now the yoga teach training's up and running. All that stuff is going really well. Next year is my return properly to the runes. I want to finish my fellowship work for the Rune Guild. I'm going to launch a new book on runes, a new rune deck, a course on runes. I'm going to start presenting at festivals again next year. So it's like a runic year for me next year. So I've got lots of that stuff. And so it feels good because I've like dedicated a lot of my time to the other things, and I'm glad I did, and I will still continue with the tantric yoga stuff. But that's also given me such a solid foundation to be able to speak with more confidence and conviction and authority on why tantric yoga can be such benefit to such a system like the runes. And honestly, I've got to give it to Edward Thorson. Like, it really going down the tantric yoga path has made me realize like what a sense of mastery the 9 Doors of Midgard, the book that is the main curriculum for the Rune Guild, is. Because even full systems of yoga I've seen aren't that like well put together and practical. So he's really done a good job, and it's felt good to circle back in a new way to know that the school of thought that I chose is a good one. Because you know what I mean? Like, the first one we choose, we don't really know any better. And you're like, hope it's good. Hope haven't just like, So it feels good to kind of come away from that for a while and then come full circle back to it with fresh eyes, fresh ears, and really appreciate it in whole new ways. So yeah, so long answer, but to circle back, what am I doing at the moment? I'm super excited to be diving fully back into the runes. And I've also been studying with a guy called Robin Artisan, who, so he is like, I guess, European folklore and witchcraft. So it bridges a lot of gaps in. So his is more, I guess, the Celtic. Like the runes is like seen as like more Nordic, Scandinavian. Whereas, because I have Scottish background, I have English background, I have German background, I have Italian background. So like I've kind of got, a bit of like ancestry in all the things. So, but I really want to dive more into the kind of Celtic witchcraft side of things. And it's very different because I think a lot of the magical systems I've done have been very ceremonial magic, right? Whereas this witchcraft course I've been in with Robin Artisan, which I highly recommend to anyone who wants to dive into, I guess you would call it traditional European witchcraft, but he even says it's like if you don't live in Europe, you're still doing like a slightly different variation of that because you're working a lot with the land spirits and things. And so that on a personal level, that's what I'm really excited about at the moment, making space to dive fully into that. I have been doing it over the last year, but very, very like sporadically and part-time. Whereas, yeah, I'm really excited for next year and the new year to be releasing all the stuff with runes and also to just be filling up my own cup to dive more deeply into these practices as well.
Well, let's dive a little deeper into the yoga because I don't think we got to talk about that last time. So tell us what the difference is. First of all, tell us what rune yoga is, and then tantra yoga is, and then tell us the difference between the two. Like, how would one do one or the other? I'm guessing they would just go with whatever they feel pulls them towards that. But can you tell us what they are and then what the difference is between the two?
Yeah, cool. So Tantra yoga originally evolved out of classical yoga. So there's main two parts of yoga. Classical yoga is all about wanting to leave the physical world. So the original yogis, there was a movement called the Shramana movement, which, let's say hunter-gatherer kind of vibes. We don't have a lot of information about what was going on. But then there was agriculture in India and cities. And then kind of along the way, someone's like, I think we've messed up. This stuff, people are getting sick, people are depressed and not happy. This doesn't feel good. And so the belief system and culture that came out of those living conditions was physical world is punishment and bad, and the spiritual world is good, and I want to escape that. So what they started doing was renouncing. They call it renunciate yoga. This was like the first main yoga movement, and they'd go into the forest or go to an ashram and they just sit and meditate. So the original yoga was just meditation. So they only had a few different poses, and the whole goal really of yoga is to move your body enough or find a position enough that you can be still. So you sit down, you shut up, and you just meditate. That's real like yoga. That is the like original yoga. But the thing is, a lot of people over time wanted to both be spiritual, but then also to have families and to have like intimate relationships and to have a job and to interact with society. And it was kind of one or the other. You're either a yogi and also people didn't always see that way. Some people who had a loving family, or a loving partner or saw the joy in the world didn't see the world as this horrible place trying to escape it, because the renunciates were trying to escape and never come back. What Tantra did was revolutionize this, saying, no, I can actually have a family, have a job, and be spiritual. More than that, I can actually see the physical world as a beautiful place and a spiritual place. More than that, in original yoga, only men could practice. There was extremely rare cases of women practicing yoga, but it was generally only men. And so Tantra was like, F that, we're going to have women practice, but more than that, we're going to have women gurus. Yeah. And then also they made like kings and, exalted higher class people sit next to peasants in the lower class, because Tantra, everyone's equal. So that's why I say Tantra is like OG feminism. Yeah. Because it actually like put everyone on equal standing. And so that's where Tantra evolved out. So that kind of happened mainly around 500 CE, so Common Era. And then that led to a lot of the modern day things, because Tantra, because it was also interested in cultivating the body, evolved into other practices. So chakras, Kundalini, this idea of syncing breath with movement, this is all tantric practice. And so this evolved into modern day yoga through hatha yoga and a lot of the other things. Yeah. So original yoga, spirit good, physical bad, escape the reality, just sit and meditate. Tantra yoga, everything is divine. we can find the divine in a cup. I know it sounds silly, but like they see everything as emanating from this same mysterious source, right? And so where runes come into that is a lot of the original yogis talked about yoga being a technology that is optionally theistic. Yeah. And so there's a lot of evidence about how these yogis saw it because they talked about the philosophy of it a lot. And so there was Christian yogis, there was like atheist yogis, what we would call a belief system as atheist. There was people, so like there was cross-pollination between Greece and Greco-Romans and India. And so there's like a statue in Greece. I'm pretty sure it's Greece or one of the either Greece or Rome or somewhere, that there's a Lakshmi statue. And this actually influenced, they believe that this influenced the look of statues in India, because in India they saw the divine not really as human form, more abstract shapes and concepts, whereas Greco-Roman, they're like, no, we need like a real like gangster looking strong deity, we need like beautiful women and all this sort of stuff. And so they kind of cross-pollinate influence. There's a really good book that talks about the connection between Shiva and Dionysus. I'm actually really diving into trying to make space to dive into the Dionysian myths at the moment. And like Dionysus sometimes seems like just like a kind of auxiliary god. He's like, yeah, just a party god. But I'm actually starting to learn that he was actually such a bigger presence in a lot of cults and a lot of connection between India as well, and might have a lot of stuff to do with entheogenics. Is that what trying to avoid saying plant medicine, but yeah, entheogenics and stuff like that. This kind of like relationship with that. Anyway, so so there is a connection between yoga and having different beliefs already. And so what yoga is to me is a way that you can dive deeper and have a more embodied relationship with any belief system, right? So you could be and you can already see that in ceremonial magic, and like the Golden Dawn is using yoga practices to get in touch with other like pagan systems of belief. And you see this across the board. And so a way to connect with the runes on a more embodied level looks like using mantra practices, using sound with the runes, using mudra practices with the runes, using different kind of poses, whether that's a static pose like Stadagalda, or using kind of like fluid movement to connect the energy with the rune, with your body. And also using like devotional practices that we find in classical Tantra as a way of connecting with deities from the northern or the Celtic paradigms. And that, so yoga really is a full spectrum immersive experience in whatever spiritual path you're wanting to do, and connecting it with the body as well, installing concepts. And we naturally already see this in the 9 Doors of Midgard, which is the curriculum of the Rune Guild, where some of the basic practices are doing breath work, starting to calm the noise in your mind so you can have more clarity and clear seeing. And then we work with technically a chakra system based on the 9 worlds. And then we're also installing concepts through mudra, through sound and mantra. And so it is a full, like already the Rune Guild's curriculum is a full system of rune yoga. And I really like didn't understand that at fully, because I had the privilege when I met Matt actually of meeting Edward Thorson as well. And I was talking to him about me wanting to mix more yoga. And he said something to me, and he's like, I've been waiting for someone to really focus on this and to actually do this. So like, I'm really glad that someone's actually taking this and running with it. And I thought it was a weird thing to say, because I thought at that time, I still had this idea that yoga was so separate from kind of what I was already doing with ceremonial magic. But as time's gone on, I'm seeing how intimately linked they are. And that's what I mean about like seeing his, the genius of the system. And because what I'm doing is I've kind of built some stuff separately, and it's kind of already interlinked with a lot of what's already there. So I'm just kind of building upon it. But yeah, so yoga, to circle back, answer your question amidst the tangents, yoga was a way of connecting with the divine, or whatever you believe the divine to be, in a sequential, systematic way. So originally they were like, cool, we're going to sit down, we're going to do these meditation practices, and we're going to try to escape the body, basically, or we're trying to we want to have the death experience while we're still alive. That's kind of what we're heading to originally. But then Tantra wanted to have that while also having a full experience of the physical reality through yoga. And then rune yoga is just essentially doing all that stuff, but more so driving it towards the northern paradigm, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, sorry. So you mentioned that you mentioned that the chaotic magic that you do can be used with yoga. I'm very fascinated by that you said that. Can you explain how you would do that? Now that we're diving
what? Sorry, mixing ceremonial magic.
Well, or chaotic magic with yoga, because I know I have used yoga or done yoga a couple of times where literally I'm, how do I put this? Like I've done it for like exercise and stuff, but because I am a little bit flexible. So I was wondering how I could incorporate that, because you said that, and how could I incorporate that into my magic? That's fascinating.
Well, so my question for you would be, what is your current magical practice? And I could probably show you a few pieces that they've drawn from magic. Because what's your background of magical practice?
Well, I am a Celtic Wiccan, so I follow the Celtic beliefs because I am part Irish in my German and Irish and Swedish. I literally have done just traditional magic. Usually I'll follow a spell, as it's written out. I don't usually do chaotic magic, though I would like to get really into the chaotic magic because there's so much I don't know about it.
What's your ritual process? What's the ceremony look like for you?
A circle. We open a circle, and then we do the magic. Of course, the circle will call in the elements, and then we'll call in the god and goddess, or in my case, goddesses and god. And then, I do my magic, and then I close my circle.
So can we break that down a little bit more? What's the actual process of it? Like, what is doing the magic? Like, what actual practices are involved in each thing? Like, what are you actually doing? Are you doing incantations? Is there anything?
Sometimes.
What do you do to prepare for it? And what do you do? Like, I'd love to know like more in depth of the.
So sometimes, for example, I'll do candle magic, and of course, I make sure that all my stuff is there. So if I burn incense, the incense is there, so I can just reach for it. That's how I kind of prepare for it. I just make sure I have all my stuff that I need. Now that I've kind of made my altar out here in my office, I haven't really done any rituals, but I can honestly say when I had it in my room, I had limited space. I mean, itty bitty tiny space. So there was only certain things I could do. Like I can't dance when I'm doing a ritual at night because my son goes to bed at a certain time when he has school. So, I would like to get more into the dancing and do a dancing ritual, but it's more like I would just make sure, I would do candle magic with a little incense. And sometimes, I will chant if there are words that usually the spell will have with it. Usually the spell is written down so I can just follow along and know what I'm doing. But that's usually how I prepare for it. I will sometimes take a shower beforehand, and then I just imagine that the negative is going out and into the drain, and the light is taking its place. I can't take a bath because we have showers here, so but it is ceremonial showers is what it is. But I wish I could take a bath sometimes, because I would love to pour some of the incense or essential oils into the bath, but unfortunately I don't have that, so I just kind of make do with what it is.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I guess for me, the elements that you talked about, there's three main influences on it. So the using different oils and different things for me is very folk magic, where it's kind of imbuing meaning to different particular aspects and physical items that you're kind of using then to have an effect. The ceremonial magic part is like you've got your circle, so this idea of separating, this otherness, and I think that's to me what the main part of a ritual is creating an otherness for a temporary period of time to then step into the otherness where the rules of the normal day-to-day life don't apply, and then you can have a change, an effect change, and then step out of that, and kind of it trickles into the mundane. So yeah, and then there's the yogic elements, I guess. Like, there's a much bigger connection between the ceremonial magic practices and the yoga than a lot of people realize, because this use of visualization, this use of like even your belief of like washing things away. The main difference between ceremonial magic practices and yoga, as I understand it, is that if you look at a lot of the medieval grimoires, it's all very outside things, right? So we've got to connect to this item, use this item at this certain time, do these actions and all that sort of stuff. And you do see this in yogic ritual and tantric ritual, but it was more so an internal practice, right? And so you can have these things happen internally on the same level, whereas Western, it's like we're calling these outside entities, we're calling these outside forces, and we're borrowing power. Whereas the yogic approach is kind of seeing these things as neither external or internal, and that there is no difference. And so if we're like calling upon a deity, it's an aspect of ourself. And so with elements, for example, in the yogic and tantric, there's the connection between the internal element. So we have like an earth chakra, we have a water chakra, we have fire chakra, air chakra, and you connect that idea to an external representation of that, such as food, food for earth. And like, you can even see that this crossover in the elemental system in the tarot and stuff, right? So the tarot is like pentacles or discs and stuff. And so it's a plate of food in the tantric framework. And then we have cups holding the water, and we have this bowl of water in the tantric framework. And so it's this connection between the physical. And I think a lot of what's happening is this same idea. It's taking the divine from somewhere outside and then bringing it into ourselves so we can then work magic. And so even, speaking incantations and speaking mantra and using sound is this close connection with yoga as well. I think the big things that influenced a lot of like modern ceremonial magic is the idea of like the middle pillar. Do you do the middle pillar ritual exercise and things like that?
I really never have heard of that. Can you explain what that is?
It's basically like a chakra system. So the middle pillar is like using the they connect it to Hebraic names and things like that in the Golden Dawn, but it's installing these concepts. So it's kind of like they've taken like Kabbalistic, tree of life ideas and then kind of mixed it with chakras and made it this connection between the body and the divine realms. And so as well, I feel like these elaborate ceremonies that we find in like medieval grimoire magic were then to be able to put us into a trance-like state, because it's in that trance-like state we then are able to work our magic. And so by doing all these elaborate tasks, I don't know if you guys have ever looked into medieval grimoire magic, but it's a lot of effort. I was getting into it initially, and it was going to take like 3 months to do one ritual. And like this is like making sure I'm awake at like 3 a.m. at certain times to draw the angelic names at the right astrological hour, and it's really, really elaborate. But the thing is, if you're dedicating this much time to something, you're gonna feel like it's gonna work, right? And through the process of yoga, instead, you're it just reminded me. There's a really good book by Phil Hine. He's a chaos magician, and he released a book recently called Wheels Upon Wheels, and I'd highly recommend that because he's really bridged the gap between chaos magic and Classical Yoga and Tantra. It only just got released in the last year, but it's a really good book. But yeah, he talks about this as well, in that through that elaborate process, you then get to get into a trance-like state, and you don't have to worry about kind of building magical muscles up to be able to do it, because you're doing it as a whole thing, right? It's a sequence. Whereas the yogic approach is a lot more prep work. So prep work is in practicing meditation, practicing breath work, being able to put yourself into an altered state of consciousness, and then connecting to this like meta language that you've created. And it's the same thing, really, to me. And like what you said about the dancing, like what is it about the dancing that you think is important? Like, why do you do the dancing part of it?
Because I've heard that moving your body can put you into a trance-like state as much as yoga can. And I would love to do yoga if I had more room, obviously. I would love to do the magic plus the yoga. I just didn't know, can you do it with traditional as well as chaotic? So I wasn't really sure about that.
What do you mean traditional?
So like, ceremonial. You would call it ceremonial. I would call it like traditional, where it's all written down. You have a set of words that you have to say, preferably in English that you would say. When you start all that.
Yeah, so I'm interested, like, what do you mean by traditional? Because so for example, Wicca started from, was it Gerald Gardner, and I can't remember the other person that put it, because Gardner was a ceremonial magician. So Wicca is a ceremonial magic system, as I understand it.
Right.
It's branched off in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But it is influenced by folk practices and ceremonial magic. And ceremonial magic to me is a modern kind of adaptation. Ceremonial magic to me is yoga mixed with medieval grimoire magic mixed with folk magic. So I wouldn't call it, that's just my, like, I understand what you mean about traditional, but ceremonial magic to me isn't, I guess, a traditional practice as I see it, but we could just be speaking about different things. So I'm curious to like understand how you view it as well.
Well, I see it as ceremonial because you have the ceremony of opening the circle, calling in the elements, calling in the deities, and then you do the magic, whether it's, candle magic or sometimes herbs are involved. I do have many, many herbs, more than I care to admit. And of course, you can also bring plants into that too. I thought about it, but I don't have any plants that I could, use. But like the traditional is you would, you would anoint your candle, and then you would put it in your candle holder, and then you'd say a few words, and then you light the candle, and then you say a few more words, and either you would dance or you would do yoga or whatever gets you into that meditative state, and you have to raise your vibration, of course. And then when you think you've hit your peak, you're done, and then you can blow out the candle or extinguish the candle, close the circle, and then wait for the magic to happen, I guess is what what I would call traditional or ceremonial, because it seems like it's a ceremony to me.
Yeah,
but I would more call it
100%.
traditional. Like that's how old people did it. The elders. That's how the elders, not old people. Sorry, old people.
Maybe the current elders, because ceremonial magic, as I understand, is only like a couple of 100 years old as far as like what we know of it. But it does draw upon older stuff. But I think, I'm not trying to be picky. It's just I think it's good to know that a lot of stuff is modern in so understanding that a lot of people are just kind of piecing together stuff. So people get real gatekeepy about ideas, and I just like, it's important to know that like these traditional practices that we're called, like, people on TikTok and stuff are calling, these are traditional practices, can't change them. It's like, dude, this is only like 100 years old. Like your granddad could have made this up, and it's not getting stuck in that traditionalism, because I mean, I like traditional stuff. Like I study traditional classical tantra, but also I hybridize it because that's what they did with that as well. They never stuck. They were interested in evolution. And I think our ancestors, like the magicians out there, the people who were working with the unseen, both would have understood that everyone perceives the unseen differently, but also we're looking at evolving and changing and adapting to circumstances. And I just like, there's so many people who are just like, no, this is traditional, that's not traditional. Like people telling me how to do rune readings where all the only information about the rune readings that we have is from a Roman guy who saw a guy throw some sticks on a white cloth with some staves on it, and it doesn't even say they're runes. And then I got these like gatekeepy pagans like commenting on my rune reading videos, being like, you can't use a rune reading card, that's not traditional. I was like, okay, cool, tell me, enlighten me, what's the traditional way of doing a rune reading? Oh, you got to have the rocks. It's just like, come on, bro. Like, it's people just have no idea. And I'm not trying to be like a dick about it, being like, oh, I know and you don't know. It's like a lot of us don't know. And so we're all just trying to figure it out together. We're all piecing it together. And like, exactly, like I liked hearing you explain what a ritual was to me, because that's exactly how I perceive it. Everything you were saying is kind of like, for me, to simplify it, a ceremonial ritual is like and having a clear start, a clear finish, and this clear like peak experience in the middle, which both feels otherworldly and feels like you've released something, right? And this is why I like having these conversations, because a lot of your body language, like if you I don't know if you have just the audio and the video version, but I definitely encourage anyone listening to watch the video so you can see our gestures. And as you were explaining, like with your body as well, like I could feel like what you were trying to say. And it is difficult to explain these experiences sometimes, but I think it is important to break these down. And so, yeah, just to circle back and we can go on to the next subject, but the yoga aspect for me is actually like doing the training to have these peak experiences, to have these shifts in state, to keep concentration, to like build our magical muscles so that we can lift heavier things metaphorically during the ritual, and the ritual can be more potent. And yeah, and just a reminder to anyone listening, we're all in this together, still trying to piece it together and trying to figure out what works. And that's why it's important to have these conversations, share with other practitioners, like being like, oh, this, I did this and this happened. And and that's why it's important to find schools and other people to chat with as well.
Well, and I don't want to seem like I'm, closed-minded. I think opening even ceremonial magic to yoga or dancing or lovemaking, which you can do. I've also heard that too.
I like to change it, to this, or lovemaking.
I don't want to be closed-minded in my magic. I want to experience everything. So if yoga helps you with exercise as well as your magic, as well as your spirituality, because I've been looking for a way to open up my senses, my clairs, because I want that gift of sight a little more prominent, and I am working on it. But I mean, if yoga can get you into that trance state, why not do it? I'm not closed-minded to any of that. And again, there is what may be tradition for me may not be tradition for somebody else. That's just what I call it, because that's what I was told to call it. But I'm open to, let's get outside our comfort zones, guys. Let's, move our bodies if we want to, and let's sing and let's dance. And I mean, if you have the voice for it, and I love dancing, I love singing, so I can orchestrate that into my magic and the yoga too. I don't see yoga as just for exercise, though it is very good for exercise and movement and flexibility, that I would like to keep into my elder years, because I was always very flexible, let's say. But is that how you see it, or are you more like, well, I don't really see yoga in magic? How exactly would you put that?
Oh yeah, I definitely see yoga in magic. So really, like, to summarize, like yoga is just understanding how to get yourself into a state that you want to be in. Yeah. So if you want to just be in a better mood, then you would do yoga in a way that gets you into a better mood, right? So, and sometimes that needs to be movement. Yeah. I remember traveling and I was like in this place that was just really, really busy. I missed my bus. I was like getting annoyed and I was feeling flustered. And all I needed to do in that point, like I was trying to do breathing, it wasn't enough. I was feeling hot. I had this big backpack on. And so I found a park. I threw my bag on the ground, stuck my hands in the ground, and just moved. Did like, you know, a bit of downward dog, a bit of movement. And that was enough for me to break me out of that mood, right? Whereas sometimes I can just do some breath work or I can just sit and meditate. And it's understanding we have this whole bag full of tools. So yoga is a bag full of tools that help you to achieve the state of being that you want to be in. Yeah. And so if you're about to work magic, you know, if you're like, okay, cool, this is a really important ritual, I need to be focused, I need to be in the right state, then you would do yoga practices such as you know, there's different types of breath work. There's breath works that are a shot of coffee that'll get you really hyped. There's breath works that'll start to put you to sleep. There's breath work that'll balance out your nervous system if you don't, if, you know, there's different practices. So understanding what tools for what job is, that's yoga. Like having this invisible bag of tools to, you know, let's just say that you have a fight with your partner and you know it's silly, like, you know, intellectually it's stupid, and you're going to ruin the rest of the evening if you let this. But you, like, your mind knows that, but your body's like, nah, I'm not going to talk to them. They got to apologize first. I'm not blah, 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 blah. All this narrative, right? So I might do a bit of movement, or I might do a bit of breath work, or, you know, I do something to level out my state so I can think clearly again. And then I'm like, once my body feels better, it's like, actually, yeah, I can let this go now, or I can move on. And again, that's just dipping into my bag of tools to help me to feel the way I was. So it can be mundane like that, to like just shift your mood into a better state. It can help you feel more confident. It can help you to get to sleep. It can help you to stay awake. And it can most definitely help you to like really get into that magical state a lot more quickly. So you don't maybe necessarily have to do this 3-month preparatory ritual, right? So like I've done rituals where I'll envision a whole ceremony, right? So I've done full ceremonies where I drive out into this secluded park at midnight and I draw the circles, I draw the things. It takes me like an hour or two to set up, and then I'll do all the conjurations and I'll summon the spirit up and do, and like, you know, 3 to 4 hours worth of work for one ritual. But then I can sit and I can visualize, you know, a whole process, similar process happening, go through each point that I need to work through to have a magical ritual and still get very good results. It feels different. Yes, the results differ in different ways, but I still get really good results. But the thing is, if I just did the meditative ritual practice, I'd get bored with magic, because magic to me is going out to the middle of a weird place and summoning a big, you know, spirit up. That to me feels more magical. And so I do that, yes, for the practical results, but also to remind me of why I got into the magic in the first place. And that's to do weird shit in the middle of nowhere. So.
No, that's the perfect term for it. Yes. But I think for someone who, like me, who has less space in their place, could do the, you know, and that's what I think I need the most help with is focus. Because, yeah, I will sit there and imagine a bunch of stuff, and then I get bored and I'm on to something else, you know, or I get distracted by, oh, no, did I turn the heat off? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, did I turn that off? And then I get mad at myself and I'm like, why did I just think that? Stay focused. So I think the focus of it is harder than a lot of people will admit. I know for me, it takes a lot, but I think, and I've done some yoga. Like I said, I haven't done it all. Trust me. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there that I haven't tried yet. But what exactly got you into tantric yoga and then wanting to, you know, incorporate it with the runes? Was it just, you know, you were getting bored with with chaotic magic as it was, or maybe the rooms as they were, but you kind of wanted to spice it up. Am I kind of right there?
Yeah, I mean, it was a natural process. So because as I said, one of the first curriculums I followed was the 9 Doors of Midgard, which was already, without me realizing, a book of rune yoga. But also, and it's funny because you were asking about like a good way to get into yoga. Honestly, from a magical perspective, the best book on yoga that I could recommend isn't actually a book of yoga, and I don't think it even mentions the word yoga once, and that is a book called Apophis by Michael Kelly. That is probably one of the best full spectrum books on progressive tantric yoga. It is like inherently tantric in its essence. It is like very yoga based. You'll learn like more really practical yoga tools in it than most yoga books. But then it's ceremonial magic. Yeah. So, and Michael Keller, the author, I don't think he even mentions it in Tantra or the word yoga, but it is 100% from all my like research and experience with tantric and yoga. It is inherently tantric yogish. So, but again, it doesn't even mention it. Um, so yeah, because that were my two biggest influences. So the Rune Guild's curriculum, 9 Doors of Midgard, and then Michael Kelly's curriculum called Apophis, which is based on the 7 heads of the dragon. And both of those are just great ways to show you how in like implicitly linked yogic practice is with magic, both with runes and ceremonial magic practices. But then I guess I went through the physical yoga method because I got into fitness. I was a fitness trainer for years. But the main thing that got me into yoga was I was dating a girl who was into like yoga, into like the physical yoga, right? The real intense, like doing cool hand tricks and stuff like that. And I started doing some yoga with her, and it was really difficult. It was really embarrassing because I thought I was really fit, and I was just like in a pile of sweat. It's like I was right in the middle of the room, and I was just like pouring with sweat, and everyone was kind of like inching their yoga mats away from me because I was turning into like a pool around me. But they are linked, but that's all people stop at sometimes. They're like, cool, yoga, I want to feel good in my body. But that's just the first step. And then, through that process of feeling good in your body, you naturally feel good in your mind and thoughts and emotions. There's more spaciousness between your thoughts and emotions, and they're not as loud and they're not as intense. Yeah. You guys have probably experienced that, whether it's yoga or a bit of movement, going through for a walk, dancing, some kind of physical activity. It ends up creating more contentment in your body, and so contentment in your thoughts and emotions. But then that's where people kind of stop. Whereas like you can go deeper and be like, cool, well, if I have spaciousness between my thoughts and emotions and they're a little bit quieter, maybe I can listen now to the more subtle like feelings, the more subtle stirrings, my intuition, even the realms of clairvoyance and all this kind of stuff. And that's what a yogi's had a genuine interest in as well. You look like you're going to say something.
No, that's interesting. You say that because I was just trying to, I wanted to show my man that I had learned all these country line dances, and I forgot most of them because when in country line dancing, as well as dancing in general, if usually you have a routine, and if you don't do it in a while, you forget everything until you see it again, and then you're like, oh wait, yeah. So I was doing this dance called Sweet Peaches, and they do it to a song called Georgia Peaches. And I was trying to remember because I know I was telling him there was a French chick on YouTube who I learned this off of. I didn't know a lick of French, but watching her move, I was able to learn this dance. And when I dance, my mind is clear. I don't think of anything except for what's the next move. So is that kind of what you're saying? Because I mean, that would be great and right up my alley. Not only would I lose weight in trying to learn the rest of these dances, but also I could even put myself into a deep trance state, but yet still be conscious enough to know what the next move is.
Yeah, and it depends what you do with these things because we all have these experiences. Like it might be playing a musical instrument. It could be playing a video game. It could be like sewing. It could be like, like we all have these experiences, but then usually we don't think much of doing anything with these experiences. It's like, oh yeah, cool. I like playing the guitar. I feel good when I play the guitar. That's it. Like that's just the thing that I do. I dance. Cool. I feel good when I dance, but then I don't feel good for a while if I don't dance for a while. But then, okay, cool. If you feel clear, maybe do some dancing before you do a ritual, and then you'll feel clearer. Or like, but dancing can be part of the ritual as well. Like you can be weaved in. So finding things that make you feel like this flow state. So there's a book called Stealing Fire that talks about this state of being, and they call it ecstasis, right? And they talk about all the different ways that you can tune into this. And one of the examples actually they give you at the start of the book is how Navy SEALs are kind of like, they know where each other are in the building, right? So they can come in with no radio connection whatsoever, completely different parts of the building, and they have some inner knowing that they know where everyone else is, right? Because they all have to work together. And they say they get this through intense training with each other. And also you can get this from going to a festival. And also you can get this from playing a musical instrument. Yeah, these flow states. So I think the bit that yoga and tantra do, which is really important, that a lot of that is missing in these, is taking time to sit in this feeling and to notice this feeling. So you probably like do you dance for a while, you feel good, you're like, oh, that's good, I feel great anyway, and move on to the next thing. Whereas what if you actually sat still with that, or just notice that? Like, cool, okay, I feel different. How do I feel different? Okay, well, I'm having the same thoughts and worries that I did before I danced, but now those worries don't seem as like in my face. They seem further away. And actually now I was trying to figure out what to do in that situation. Now it's also clear to me, and noticing how the differences actually play out. And we do this in yoga. If you ever been to a yoga class, we have this bit at the end where you just lay down and be still. Yeah. And it's so you can actually observe the spaciousness, because all that prep work, all that like movement and doing the thing and doing the physical stuff is to experience the spaciousness at the end of it. And so that's the important part. And so also they talk about this in classical tantra and yoga, is trying to balance out the Shakti and the Shiva, right? So yes, you can see as masculine and feminine, but we won't get into that because that's often confusing people and it's really misunderstood. But essentially Shiva is stillness a lot of the time, and Shakti is movement. It can be different, but let's just say that in this way we're gonna do it, right? And so you dancing is very Shakti, right? So it's very moving. So you're exerting and moving energy, and that can lead to exactly. Let's say Matt, like you and Matt both wanted to feel good. Yeah, you were both stressed out, and you both wanted to feel good. So Matt sat down and he breathed in and out a bunch of times, whereas you started dancing around and put on some music. You both get to like the same space, but you do it differently, right? But the end part is important, because even though Matt was still sitting still, he still should try to notice at the end within that what is shifting, what's different, to know what's actually happening, and to balance out that as well. And so they say you only really need to do about 10 to 20% of Shiva practices as opposed to Shakti. So you can do like, let's say you had 10 minutes, do like 8 minutes of movement and 2 minutes of stillness. Yeah. So yeah, it's just essentially they call it the afterglow, basking in the afterglow. It's just like noticing, and you can do that in your intimate lovemaking stuff that you're doing as well. So you can, once you have that, observing the difference afterwards, right? And actually, in one of Michael Kelly's books, he called it post erotocomatose lucidity. Yeah, and it's post erotocomatose lucidity. So it's this feeling that you get after a peak experience, right? And so, I won't obviously go into the practical aspects of how to use that, but that's still like basking in the afterglow of that, right? And so you can get this after ritual. And it's just like noticing the subtle changes and the differences, because we often dismiss like the after effects of a lot of these things. Anyway, going too far on a tangent, but does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah. I never would have thought of to dance and then be still, but I think I'm going to try that now. Definitely, because I mean, that just, it sounds like that's what I need to do, to feel that stillness. Now, would you recommend like me dancing and then would I breathe, or would I just sit still, no breathing? I mean, breathe normally, but you know.
Yeah, I think if you're focusing on your breath, it's still a very like doing action. It's like a very Shakti, because like you could sit still and I could do a breath work practice, but it's still a doing, right? Whereas like it's distracting you. And so the stillness, I mean, is actually being in all of that, just sitting down and not being perfectly zen and like everything is amazing. It's actually sitting back and like watching all those thoughts, all those feelings, all that stuff just swirling around you, and just being like, oh, I'm aware of this right now. Like I'm aware that I'm aware. And it's kind of like, it's like that witnessing awareness, right? Like, you know, you talking to me and us sitting all here, obviously we're focused on us, but can you for a moment like drop back a second, and it almost feels like you're watching yourself have this experience, and there's that part of us that's always there. And you know, it's, we're not really like trying to become enlightened beings. Like any moment you can have it. And that's the secret that a lot of occultists won't tell you, that you have to go through all the progressions, and like, you know, you got to pay all the progression costs and all that sort of stuff to become enlightened. You can have moments of it immediately right now, but it is tricky to get that. Like that's why we have poetry that like makes us feel this way, or we do movement that makes you feel this way. Or you might be watching a wrestling match, and you know, you might like be wanting to watch that, you know, this matchup that's you've been wanting to happen for years, and it finally happens and it goes down, and you feel elated, and you feel all this, and you feel this like connection to this mysterious thing. And amidst all that, when you're completely lost in that elation, in that ecstasy, can you take for a moment and observe yourself feeling all these things, and observe, and like, you know, that's just a practice that you can do to like try to, when you get really stuck into something, take a step back and observe yourself, because that is going to be a really good practice to not get lost in things that you don't want to be lost in, but also to remind yourself of these great experiences, because when you do that, it like solidifies that in your memory and subconscious. And so when you are dancing and you feel great and you get lost in it, and can you pause for a moment, or even continue to dance and still observe yourself and be like, wow, this is actually making myself feel great. I need to remember this, because I will forget it very soon and get lost in all the same stuff I do. Or, you know, like when you're watching that wrestling match and you're really lost in it, and, you know, this is like the greatest thing ever, like zoom out and be like, wow, how cool is it that we can actually put these things on as humans, and we can connect through this, and this is happening, and that I've found this thing that I love so much. And really, like, you know, it may feel an obvious thing. It's like, yeah, of course, I already know that. But zooming out can really instill it in you. And that like is highly underrated, like how much we can cement that feeling, because we can tap back into that feeling. So when you're not feeling your greatest, and it'll happen like on a daily basis, you'll be like, oh, life's really hard. You can tap back into that feeling. And that is a yogic practice as well. We install these feelings into our body by zooming out and doing different practices. And so we can tap into that energy at any time. Be like, you know what? The day's hard, but there's another match on this Saturday. Or, you know, or I can dance. I have 5 minutes spare. Like I can dance. Like, you know, reminding yourself that you have more say in how you want to feel on a day-to-day level. Not 100% of the say. Like I've got tons of tools in my belt, and I lost my temper the other day. You know, I still lose my shit from time to time, but I also, let it happen. Make sure it's not destructive. Make sure like when I'm like all this fire's burning up, it's not like destroying unnecessary things, but seeing even like anger and frustration as a necessary force. And I'll go do a workout, or I'll clean the house. I'll try to funnel it into something productive as well. Not all the time, but yeah, every now and then. So.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel. This has been very enlightening. I think this hour we got to dive a little deeper into the yoga part. And I would love to have Cassandra back on to also get, what she's doing. So just tell us again where we can find you and what projects or irons you have in the fire. And then I will say my things. Matt, do you have anything to promote?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So go ahead, Daniel. Where can people find you and your irons in the fire?
Cool. So yeah, I guess the first point of call is just go to the show notes. All the links will be there, I'm sure. But otherwise, you can find me on Instagram at Daniel Erulian, or you can just find me at ritualembodiment.com, and most of the link things are there. The main thing in the fire at the moment, so just released the tarot course, Tantric Tarot, aka Cartomancer. That is with Cassandra Polke. So that is a deep dive into the tarot and especially the minor arcana and the elements through that. But next year, I've got a lot of rune stuff coming out. So if you want to dive into that, you know where to find me.
Links in the description field, guys. So for me, thank you so much, Daniel. It's been wonderful having you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. And we have to have you back again, of course, when you finally launch that. When do you think you're going to be launching that tarot course? Is it launched, or do you have a launch date yet?
The tarot course or the rune course?
Both.
So the tarot course is already launched. So that launched a week and a half ago. So that's already up and running. People can join that whenever they want. And the rune course sometime next year. I'm not going to I have a bad tendency to put dates out and not reach them. So I'm just going to say early to mid-ish next year. But I'm gonna start early signups within the next few months. So if you sign up early and you're happy to wait for a bit, you'll get a much better price on that.
Okay. So all the links.
It's been great chatting to you guys, and I think as I said, these conversations are really important. So, so if you don't have any, pagan, magic-y, witchy friends to hang out with, just come hang out with us more. I think this is great.
Absolutely. So my other show, I'm actually on episode 64. I'm going to record that this Wednesday because Thursday I have to check something else out. But we're on episode 64, and I believe we're on the match with it's Kurt and Sam Houston. So Sam Houston was the younger brother of Jake the Snake Roberts, for those who don't know who Sam Houston is. And Kurt did have at least one match with him. I think there was one other one, but I think it was like a house show that no one ever saw. So we're going to watch along we're going to talk about the wrestling of the day, of course. Last week, I recorded 63 and before that 62. And we actually talked about, the AWA ratings, and then also the star Meltzer star ratings, which were absolutely atrocious. Of course, garbage in, garbage out. But we will definitely talk about, the wrestling of the day. Of course, we have so much to talk about, with Hogan, endorsing Donald Trump. And then, of course, you have the other side. You have Mick Foley. And then you also have Jim Cornette, who endorsed Harris. Also, The Undertaker had The Undertaker had Trump on his podcast. So we'll talk about that too. And of course, any other garbage that we can find on AEW, because again, it is a garbage network, in my opinion. Unless it's something you like. I mean, if you like AEW, more power to you. I don't see what you see, but it's there, and you're more welcome to think what you want. It is a free country. But yeah, we're going to deal with Sam Houston and Kurt Hennig. And then also on Sunday, November 17th, I'm going to have Angel Riviera on my show. Matt, you are welcome to come on as well. We are actually going to watch the Superpose Down. I promised this to all my Rick Rude fans, and I'm going to keep my promise. I just have been so busy lately. that I want to get the Ultimate Warrior and the Rick Rude superposed down that was done at Royal Rumble 1989. So 1989 Royal Rumble, it was the superposed down between Rick Rude and the Ultimate Warrior, which would eventually lead to their WrestleMania match, which Rick Rude would win, and he would win the Intercontinental Championship belt. So we are, like I said, my Rick Rude fans, it is in the works. We will be getting that done. November 17th, we're going to record that. It will come out probably mid-December, maybe late December. But I definitely going to have that in the works. Also, I just looked and I am at 98,000 followers on YouTube for my Curt Hennig Was the Best, Changed My Mind. I am almost at 100K, everyone. Woo! So, and as I promised, when we hit 100K, I will be giving out, or at least doing, the full interview that Curt gave on a radio show. He talks about all kinds of things, you know, his music and what he thought of Hogan and Bret Hart and et cetera, et cetera. So that will be coming out as soon as we hit 100K and as soon as I can get it all together for you. But right now, we will be here next week. Do we have anyone next week, Matt?
Nah, I believe it's just us.
Okay, so we'll be back next week with another episode of Black Magic Talk. Please look for that. And again, you will hear, everyone at the end will hear, you'll either hear a little blurb that I have, because I do have an AI song dedicated to Wicca. It's something I created with AI. I just wanted to do that because really there's no country songs that I knew of that were about Wicca. One came close. It was called The Longest Night, and that was by Mary Chapin Carpenter. So it didn't really say Wicca or paganism. It just kind of, you know, mentioned that Yule was the longest night. So that is what everyone will hear at the end. You'll hear a little blurb on YouTube just saying it's AI generated. And if you're on Rumble, anything goes. So it's AI, but you'll still hear it. And then, so, you know, subscribe to everyone who is here. The links are in the description field. If you do want to give to any of my shows, whether it's Pro Wrestling Talk, Curt Hennig Was the Best, Changed My Mind, or Black Magic Talk, I have my Cashapp. I also have my PayPal link in the description field. Please, just in the little description line, please tell me which show you are giving to, so that way I can distribute evenly if I need to. All right, everyone, have a great week, and blessed be everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great week. Blessed be everyone. Hello. I just want to let everyone know that the outro music is AI generated. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. And also, if you would like to generate your own AI, the link in the description field will be for their website. Blessed be everyone.
In the woods where the whispers run deep, underneath the moon where secrets we keep, she dances in the shadow with the silver tide. Candles flicker soft, guiding light as a guide. Her altar's filled with herbs and old charms, lost in ancient spells, safe in her arms. Stars weave a tapestry across the black sky. With a chalice raised high, she lets out a sigh. With her sacred circle drawn tight, calling to the spirits in the quiet of the night. Her magic's in the earth, the wind, and the seas. She whispers ancient words, swaying like the trees. In a grove of oaks, where the world stands still, she gathers her strength with every Sabbath thrill. The moon's tender gaze, casting shadows cold, the stories of her craft in the twilight retold. The room by the her doorstep, sweeping away all the dark shadows of yesterday. With the cauldron bubbling, herbs to the air, every spell she casts is a heartfelt prayer. With her sacred circle drawn tight, calling to the spirits in the quiet of the night.